We are slowly approaching the 4th month of Nintendo's brand new console being the Switch 2. And with that, the fan base seems divided amongst a lot of people that still feel like Switch 1's 2017 was a bigger, better year for Nintendo than so far what we've seen with Switch 2's 2025 launch year. Now I'll be honest, for a while, even since the release and reveal of Switch 2, I've felt like 2017 was still way better for Nintendo. Now the question is, was 2017 really as good as we make it out to be? Are we remembering something because of nostalgia? Do we just want to make it feel like 2017 was actually better, or does 2025 actually do a lot more than Nintendo's ever done in that first year for Switch 1? Well, before we dive into that, I want to make it very clear that nobody is downplaying the sales of Switch 2. It is the fastest, best-selling console out the gate for Nintendo so far, and one of the best ever, so clearly Switch 2 is off in a triumphant start. And Mario Kart World selling like hotcakes as well, as it's almost a 1-to-1 purchase rate with Switch 2s and the game itself. Now I know the game's also coming in bundles, but still, that is a lot of Switch 2s and Mario Kart World sold. Now it's hard to compare this year to 2017 anyways, because for one, the year's not over, plus we still have 6 months of next year, considering the fact that it's still within that calendar year to include, since the Switch 2 came out in June this time instead of March like the Switch 1 did. But I want to take us back to 2017. Let's go back 8 years ago and discuss what Nintendo did in that year. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the, lead up to the reveal, but I feel like Switch 1 had a very good marketing cycle. They were preparing people by giving us code names of the console. For instance, the NX, we knew that was the name until we learned it was called the Nintendo Switch. Then they gave us an official reveal trailer that showed off so many fun games and little sneak peek segments, so that way we can look forward to them. We saw what the next 3D Mario would look like. We saw more of the amazing open world Zelda Breath of the Wild. We've seen glimpses of Splatoon 2 and other third-party games like 2K coming to the console, and even Skyrim. There was so much that was teased in just a single reveal trailer before we got anything else. Then the beloved 2017 January Switch presentation would air, and this is still, in my eyes, the best presentation Nintendo has ever had, hands down. It was handled so well. It showed that Nintendo kind of cared about every single reveal, and that every single thing that they revealed was a big deal to them. They showed how the console worked in some cool little, snappy trailers, and then they would also just reveal game after game after game. They showed us a brand new IP that Nintendo hasn't done in years, giving us ARMS. They would drop the first trailer for Splatoon 2, which is way bigger than people give it credit for. Like, I want to get back to that one in a minute. But then they also showed us Super Mario Odyssey, the next 3D sandbox Mario game, and they already announced that it would be a holiday game in October. Another huge shock for a lot of people is they revealed a brand new Xenoblade, finally being the sequel of the Wii game, and they ended the show with another huge trailer for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, one complaint that somebody might have about this show was the lack of third-party games. That there were a couple, like Skyrim and 2K and stuff, but yeah, Nintendo didn't focus much of their show at all on third-party games, and it wasn't until the very end of the show, making sure that they put their first-party software first, because that's what people buy their console for, is those big first-party Nintendo IPs. That's what they want to see first, and then maybe some third-party games second. But yeah, there was a major lack of third-party games, which was most people's only major concern. Obviously, the Switch would release at the beginning of March, and release with probably one of the biggest launch titles of all time, being The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, this is where some people like to throw flags at, considering the fact that Breath of the Wild was both a Wii U game and a Switch game. And to this day, I see people online, and they even try to argue with me that just because it was a cross-release, it's not necessarily considered a big first-year Switch game, which is mind-blowing to me. I mean, if you don't believe me, just go to my Twitter account and look at some of the comments. Now, what I have to say about this is simple. Breath of the Wild sold a total across both consoles of 33 million units, and that's not even being a pack-in game for the Switch or anything like that. Like, that is insane numbers. Now, only 1.7 million of those 33 million were Wii U copies. That's only a measly 5% of copies were Wii U copies. So I'm sorry, 95% Switch copies. This was a Switch game. Not to mention the game ran better, looked better, and had that portability of the Switch, and it was the main reason people wanted to buy the game and buy the Switch. So not including it into Nintendo's 2017 Switch lineup is insane to me. That would mean we couldn't include Metroid Prime 4, or we couldn't include Pokemon Legends ZA this year. A lot of people are skipping ARMS as well when they talk about 2017. It may not have been the greatest or biggest game of all time, but it was still a fun first party, new IP for Nintendo that they were testing out. And it didn't like take away from any of the major games. It was still a great game to have during one of the months going throughout the rest of the year. ARMS was a great experience. And like I said, I played a lot of that game. I don't really play it now, and I haven't played it since like that first couple of months, but still, it was a great game to have that year one. Showing off the motion of the Joy-Con and, just having something different from the rest of the lineup, and also a big online multiplayer-focused game. It was a pretty big deal still. Then after that huge Breath of the Wild start in the spring, they had another huge game in the summer, being Splatoon 2. This was a huge multiplayer game, and arguably still one of the best Splatoon games out there. Honestly, I still think it's better than Splatoon 3 for a lot of reasons, from the map design, from the Splatfest design. Like, that game was a huge deal. I know I just said that ARMS was like the first new IP in a while, but yes, we did get Splatoon, and that was on the Wii U, and Splatoon blew up instantly. And to finally have this big brand new series on a new console, and today has sold over 13 million units, it shows that that game was a big deal. And to have a big online multiplayer focused game that early on Nintendo Switch 2's new console was awesome. And don't get me started with how insanely popular that game is in Japan right now. Splatoon 2 was like the game to really just ramp everybody into the series. So yeah, do not sleep on that game. It was 100% one of the biggest games in Nintendo's 2017 lineup. Then after a big game to start the year, a big game in the middle of the year, they had a huge game to close the year with Super Mario Odyssey, man. This game just took the world by storm. And not only that, but we knew about the game the entirety of the year. We could generate hype. We got new trailers every now and then and new information, and Nintendo really cared about this game. They were having like a globetrot around the world where they sent a mascot around like every state and stuff to advertise the game, leading back in New York City with a big party, dance numbers celebration. Like, this was one of their biggest games of all time, and they knew it, and they had to capitalize on it. And you just felt the magic. You felt the power that Nintendo had, and that they were coming out with this new console and swinging after the failure that was the Wii U. What better way to close out your holiday season of your first year of your new console with a Mario game? And I don't think you're ever going to beat the two huge monstrous releases of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey in 1 year. It was unprecedented, not to mention with the amazing Splatoon 2 release in between these games. It was a massive year, but that wasn't the only things that launched that year. Nintendo brought back Mario Kart 8, but now in a deluxe form, adding new characters and also revamped battle mode completely from the ground up. We know towards the end of the Switch lifecycle, Nintendo would give this game tons of DLC, adding like 48 brand new tracks, tons of new characters, and yeah, this game would grow on to be the best-selling game Nintendo has ever made. Another game that people tend to forget is Mario Rabbids, which was an amazing experiment that actually worked. It was so wild to see Mario and the Rabbids of Ubisoft work together, but in this XCOM strategy RPG, it worked to perfection. So good that it sold over 10 million copies and actually had a sequel on the Switch. A huge Mario RPG year one with a wacky spinoff just showed that Nintendo wasn't afraid to experiment and do Nintendo things. And even Nintendo's less popular RPGs got touched on here. Fire Emblem got a brand new Warriors game, and Xenoblade finally got the sequel to the original Wii game, being Xenoblade Chronicles 2, that would release in December, really just capping off the rest of the year. Now, Nintendo didn't really have much the following year, starting the year in the first couple of months, simply due to the fact that they blew out all of their major IPs off the gate, which was their downfall ultimately, because the next couple years, it took them some time to recuperate. But they even had a brand new 2D Kirby game with Kirby Star Allies that would release just about a week or two after that official 1 year time gap. So it barely missed the cut for Switch's first year, but still, it just goes to show that Nintendo still had games popping out and literally covering all of their IPs. Now, not only was this a stellar year for Nintendo, Nintendo's marketing and communication was top notch. We would have Nintendo Directs every single time we'd expect them to appear. We had tons of communication from Nintendo, and it just seemed like they were having lots of fun. Like I said, they had Mario journeying across the world to advertise for Super Mario Odyssey. The whole year almost felt like one big advertisement for that game. So we all had something to 100% look forward to. I think everybody was looking forward to Super Mario Odyssey, whether you were a Mario fan or not. It was just one of those huge games, and you can see, go to Nintendo's YouTube and look at their most popular YouTube trailers. They were all Super Mario Odyssey. So yeah, it's a mixture of awesome releases, awesome communication, tons of Nintendo Direct showcases, games to look forward to around every corner. Nintendo was communicating, releasing, just firing off on all cylinders. But something I lot of people are bringing up is that Nintendo has way more games in their 2025 lineup. So let's talk about what this year has looked like so far, with just about half of it being known. 2025 was a strange year. Everybody was expecting news on Switch 2 the entirety of 2024, and nothing would come. So much so, the fact that the console itself actually leaked online, we knew exactly what it was going to look like, how it was going to work. So when Nintendo finally did drop a reveal trailer, it was really nothing special or nothing new outside of revealing a glimpse of the new Mario Kart game. But yes, they showed off this new trailer in a weird way as well. There was no pre-announcement, there was no plan or anything. They just took to Twitter one random morning and said, oop, here's a trailer, and popped up on YouTube as well. That was such a weird thing to wake up to, just a random trailer for the Switch 2. Not to mention, it was already kind of teased by leakers beforehand, so nothing about the Switch 2 really felt like a surprise. After 8 long years and a couple years of complete silence, a lot of people started to think that Nintendo waited way too long to reveal this thing. Unlike Switch 2's console reveal, they didn't really show off any video games outside of Mario Kart, and Mario Kart was only a couple of seconds. So we didn't really know what we'd be playing on this new console, as Nintendo was keeping everything hush-hush. We would still have to wait around 3 months until we get the blowout of the console. We then finally reached the Switch 2 Direct, after a long wait and our minds filled with all the possibilities that could be shown off here. It was an hour-long show just like 2017's presentation after all, so we had a good reason to expect a lot of things. They opened up with a killer Mario Kart World trailer that immediately got everybody hyped for the rest of the show. It was the best possible way they could open up the Direct, and honestly, before we knew about all the problems that would later plague the game, this was one of the greatest trailers I think we've ever gotten. After that massive video game reveal, Nintendo started taking things a lot slower in the show with its pacing. I mean, they spent about 4 to 5 minutes just talking about game chat, which is a feature that lets you chat to your friends, which felt weird to go so in detail with, considering the fact that consoles for the last 20 years plus has had game chat in some sort of way. So this just felt very strange to be sitting and watching people chat with their friends instead of watching new reveals. But you know what, still, I get it. It was something that they were proud of and wanted to show off. They then went into a console overview, which was just as good as the original 2017 presentation. It showed us everything we needed to know about the console in quick, snappy ways, while also giving us visual representation as to what the console would be like. So that way we could better understand the HDR, the frame rate, the graphics, just everything about the console and how it compared to the original Switch. I felt like they handled this absolutely perfectly. And then they spend the next about 10 minutes moving into some games that we'll be able to play. And this is, at least for me, where it started to fall off even more. Where the first thing they showed was the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which was a game where you learn about your Switch 2. Now, you guys may have seen my recent video where I think the game is actually a lot better than what people give it credit for, but seeing this in a Switch 2 presentation was an absolute snooze fest. This is a game that you must play, you can't really talk about. And the fact that Nintendo was charging anything for this, even though it was $10, was mind-blowing how this wasn't a pack-in game to learn about the console that you just spent $450 for. They then continue with the future games to talk about tons of Switch 2 editions, which also was very strange, because once again, you buy a $450 console, you want to see new things, not games we've already played in the prior years. Showed off Mario Party Jamboree once again, which was already, in my opinion, an okay game with just additional gimmick gameplay with the Switch 2. They showed off Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, both getting Switch 2 editions to improve the frame rate, the colors, just make the games pop and look and run a lot better, while also adding some small quality of life things like a navigation system and also little things that you can interact with on your map, but nothing massive. It was just, once again, these two games that we played already. Showed off Kirby and the Forgotten Land, another old game that we've played years prior. It is receiving a Star-Crossed World additional game mode to add more content to the game, although we don't know much about that mode yet. And finally, Metroid Prime 4 talk, but it was chalked down to like a 15 to 30 second gameplay segment just to show off FPS. Yeah, that's the only reason they revealed it. And they didn't reveal anything else about it. No release date, no fancy new trailer, nothing. Which felt like a stab in the heart for Metroid fans, and myself included, because I'm like, that's all they wanted to use this game as? A way to show off a Switch 2 edition since it's coming out on both Switch 1 and Switch 2, and just to show off the functions of the Switch? They didn't even really give us a new trailer, nothing to be excited about, no type of information about the game, and since then we still have not received anything. And the last game obviously being Pokemon Legends ZA, which is a Pokemon game coming on both Switch 1 and Switch 2 that showed how it ran and looked a lot better on Switch 2. Surely it was time for Nintendo to show something else that was as big as Mario Kart, right? Well, nope, they continue on with something called Drag and Drive, which was a strange wheelchair basketball game made to utilize the mouse controls of the Joy-Con 2. This was weird. This didn't even feel like it had Nintendo's flair. It felt like a cheap cash grab just for us to learn the controls of the mouse mode and stuff, and ultimately made a lot of people upset that this was even a thing. That would be the bulk of Nintendo's first-party announcements until the very end of the show, where they would go in huge segments. I believe I counted about 25 to 30 minutes of the 1-hour show was dedicated to third-party games, which might be a big deal for people that didn't play these games, but for anybody that has another console in their home, odds are they played a lot of these games, and they still run a lot better than what they do on Switch 2, at least from some of the things that I've seen so far with people playing these games on Switch 2. And once again, let me clarify, almost every single game that they showed in the first 30 to 40 minutes of this Direct was games that I've already played. Yes, I own pretty much every console, an Xbox Series X, a PS5, and a PC, and I've played every single one of these games that they showed off, Split Fiction personally being one of my favorites, so I had really no reason to care about any of these games. Now, this wasn't terrible considering the fact that Nintendo desperately needed more third-party support, because that was the biggest issue for Switch 1 pretty much throughout its entire lifecycle, not just the reveal. And Switch 2 had a lot of game reveals, and it's kind of strange to me that a lot of people were complaining after this that there weren't that many third-party games, or at least release dates. Maybe it was just release dates, but I feel like they showed off a pretty good chunk compared to any other presentation that they've ever had before. One of those third parties being a Nintendo exclusive FromSoft game. After the long wait for an actual Switch 2 exclusive first-party game, we finally got one, but in the form of Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. This was a mixed one for a lot of people and still is. As someone that played both Hyrule Warriors games, it was kind of confusing to me why this was a game that they felt like they needed to reveal right now in this Switch 2 presentation and spend a chunk of time on it. Like, you know, not only have we been in this world of Breath of the Wild for 8 years non-stop, but it's the third Hyrule Warriors game. It was a little strange that they wanted to make this a big deal during the Switch 2 presentation. So yeah, as I am very excited for this game and the lore that it's going to bring to the game and to the series, I still was confused by this announcement. But Nintendo would move on to another announcement of GameCube and SO, which once again was games that we've already played. I think Nintendo's big strategy here was giving us games that we've already played but upgrading them. Now, this was still a really exciting thing because there's so many awesome GameCube games that just kind of kills scalpers and allows us to finally play them, and we've been waiting for this for so long. So as excited as I was for this, because dude, Chibi Robo is out right now, which was otherwise like a $200, $300 plus game for scalpers out there. So seeing this on the actual Nintendo Switch 2 system is just still, it feels like a dream, and I'm so excited to play things like F-Zero GX finally, and Soul Calibur 2. Like, I never imagined that game would come back out. But still, once again, old games on a $450 brand new console. Nintendo would then spend the rest of the entire show showing off even more third-party games, which felt strange. Once again, I was like, oh, we're still going in third-party games. I thought they would shift, but this started to feel nothing like the 2017 presentation, where Nintendo's focus was first-party software, then third-party at the end. It seemed like Nintendo's focus had been changed to third-party first, first-party second. And once again, some of these were some huge gets, which is very important for the console, like Final Fantasy VII Remake that I've already played, or Elden Ring that I've already played. It's just kind of like, these are games that I've already played years ago, and seeing them again just wasn't that exciting for me, even though I know that there's a fan base for some of these games. In fact, I just finished and played Final Fantasy VII Remake just months before this reveal, which made it even more not important for me. But Nintendo had 2 more reveals up their sleeve, so personally I thought to myself, these have to be 2 massive games. Well, at least one of them were. I grew up with Kirby Air Ride. I actually grew up with the GameCube, and it's one of the games that I remember fondly from my childhood, but I couldn't quite understand why Nintendo wanted to reveal this as a big Switch 2 game during their first big Switch 2 Direct. I was a little confused because we were just getting Mario Kart World, and there were tons of other racers coming out in the year, like Garfield Kart 2 and even Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, so I was a little confused as to why Nintendo wanted to have another racing game so close to the first one. When I saw it was coming out in 2025, it really made me scratch my head because I thought it'd be a perfect year 2 game, personally. Not to mention, we were just getting a Switch 2 Kirby and the Forgotten Land edition, so I was like, why now? And then they would end the show with Donkey Kong Bonanza, which, let me tell you, has grown to be my favorite game from Nintendo in years, and I even think it's, and sometimes even better than Odyssey. But even with that said, that first reveal trailer wasn't all that exciting. I couldn't really tell what the game was about or what we were doing in this game. Donkey Kong was just running around these colored worlds that looked very similar to Super Mario Odyssey and just punching enemies, and then the trailer ended before we really seen anything. It wasn't until the Bonanza Direct that really sold me on how crazy the game was. But that was Nintendo Switch 2's main direct to draw people into the new console, and I was left feeling a little lackluster on it. The Switch 2 would come out with its launch title competing against Breath of the Wild of 2017 and would not fire on all cylinders for a lot of people. The game had a lot of problems with some of its track design, with its intermissions, the lack of content, and just some of the things that Nintendo was forcing us to play and do in this game was just very strange. Not to mention, people were outraged over the price of $80 for this game, so much so they were spamming Nintendo's chats almost every single presentation they had. Even the Nintendo Direct that they hosted for Mario Kart World felt like a big newsletter that they could have just emailed out to all the fans instead of having a whole 25-minute show dedicated to it. But shortly after, we had a Direct dedicated to Donkey Kong that just absolutely blew Mario Kart World's Direct out of the water. This thing showed off how amazing this game was going to be, gave us all the information we needed to know. There was lots of secrets and stuff that they were hiding from us that they revealed in this Direct that we'd find out later on. There was even more crazier secrets that was hiding in the game itself that Nintendo had for us, which wasn't the case with Mario Kart World. What we saw from that demo of the treehouse was what we got. That was not the case with Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong felt like an outlier for a lot of reasons for this entire Switch 2 launch so far. The best way I can describe it is like Donkey Kong somehow escaped its timeline and came out on the wrong console somehow. Like, it feels like it had the effort and the power of a 2017 game. But even with me personally having a lot of issues with Mario Kart World, both of these games were a blast the first 2 months of the console. But that's the problem. That's really all we have, and it looks like that's all we're going to have for the rest of this year. $10 Switch 2 Welcome Tour came out, and as I will say, and I will give it credit, it was a lot better than what I thought it was going to be. It's still a $10 learning manual about how your Switch 2 works that should have been packed in with the game. For Drag and Drive, the demo that we got about a couple days before the game came out pretty much showed us everything that the game had to offer already. So honestly, there's no reason to even purchase the game if you didn't like it, and because there was nothing else hiding from the game. That was it. What we saw and what we played was what we got, and after playing the game for a couple hours, I was not impressed whatsoever. The Plus Jamboree TV edition came out from Mario Party Jamboree, and it was pretty bad from the people that I've heard. I didn't even purchase the game, and from every single person that I heard play this game said it was just an awful experience where sometimes it didn't even work right. It would just felt like a little tech demo or something, and it definitely wasn't worth the money. They didn't even add anything more to the base game, like new boards or anything to keep people playing. The Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom stuff really just ultimately became better ways to play the games that we already loved. It looks like Kirby coming next week is our only way we're going to get something that's worthwhile from Switch 2 editions, even though, once again, it is an old game for its main game. Here we are about a week and a half until September, and there's not much to look forward to still. We just got a direct focus on Kirby Air Riders, and I think the game looks really cool and really good. Do I think it's a major AAA game to be excited about and a huge holiday title for this year? No, I think it's going to be a fun little racing game. It might even be better than Mario Kart World, who knows, but I don't think it's going to mount as anything massive for Nintendo this year. From what I've seen so far, and from the people that I've talked to and listened to that played the demo at Gamescom this year, pretty much just said, hey, it's Kirby Air Ride again, but in HD with some new content. That's ideally what it feels like, that there's not too much that's different about the game. If you played it on the GameCube, it plays pretty much exactly the same on the Switch 2. So we're just going to obviously have to wait, because I do think Sakurai is hiding a big mode or something else with this game. We just haven't seen it yet, so it's still too early to chalk this game up as just a Kirby Air Ride remake or something like that. And once again, with this being one of the first games I've ever played when I was a kid and played non-stop, I am very excited for this game still. Something else that's been different with this year is that Nintendo has had no type of communication with its fans. We haven't had a Nintendo Direct since that April Direct, and here we are almost in September. Thankfully, just a couple days ago, Sakurai at least gave us a release date for Kirby Air Riders in November, but outside of Pokemon in October, that's all we know. That's it for the rest of this year, which is extremely weird. As your first big holiday season, Nintendo doesn't have anything massive. Maybe they're still hiding something that they're going to reveal and release a month later, which would be crazy, but I don't see it being anything massive for the rest of this year. And there's still just so many games on the table with no dates, which makes it so frustrating. Metroid fans, I feel you. I understand, because as a Metroid fan myself, maybe not as diehard as you guys, I couldn't imagine being a diehard Metroid fan the way I am Mario. Wait, maybe I can. Now, it absolutely blows my mind that this game hasn't got got a full overview trailer or like a big blowout trailer to really show us what this game is about, let alone a release date. Like, they're still saying this game is supposed to be coming out this year. It just got rated recently, the last couple of days, so I'm sure it is coming this year, but that's not the problem. Why is Nintendo's marketing so strange? Why have they not been showing this game off? Metroid's already a relatively niche franchise for a lot of people still, so what better way to get people excited about a Metroid Prime 4 game on their brand new Switch 2 than to just talk non-stop about it? Give it its own individual direct. Have a big blowout trailer in your Nintendo Directs, but they really haven't given us anything. I'm sure they are going to soon, and people are going to say, see, you worried for nothing, but that's not the point. With 2017, we knew what we were getting that entire year. There were no mysteries. Nintendo's communication was top-notch, and they had Nintendo Directs to communicate when they needed to, so we were never left in the dark. There's no reason we should be left in the dark about any game still coming out this year when we're almost a week until September. I mean, my most anticipated games for the rest of this year right now aren't Nintendo games. That shouldn't be the case on a brand new Nintendo console. I'm more excited about an upcoming 3D platformer SpongeBob game, or Bubsy 4D, or shoot, even Pac-Man World 2 Repack, which is one of my most anticipated games of all time right now. So yeah, the fact that none of them are Nintendo games is very strange. And every single time we think they're about to drop a Nintendo Direct and reveal tons of stuff, it's an indie world, it's a partner Direct, it's a game-specific Direct, which is so strange. It's like they're purposely not giving us information. And like, for instance, they just randomly drop on Twitter one day, Splatoon Raiders is a game coming out, a spin-off adventure game for the series, which is one of my most anticipated games for Nintendo ever right now, but they refuse to say anything else about it. Like, what is this game? Can we get some gameplay? Can we hear about it again? When is it coming out? Just nothing, and it's just weird. Now, something to note is that the year is only just began for Switch 2. I mean, we're only about 3 to 4 months into this new console, and there's been a lot of games, and that's what a lot of people are arguing. Technically, there are way more games coming out for Switch 2 than the first couple of months of the Nintendo Switch 1, where we're having a game release, or sometimes 2 games released every single month. So far, it's looking like September is our only month with no game releases, unless Nintendo has some crazy shadow drop for Mario's 40th or something. I don't know what else it could possibly be. With that said, I feel like the games that we're getting, just because we're getting a bunch, doesn't mean they're necessarily high quality games. Look at the games that we've gotten so far that are big Switch 2 exclusives: Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza. Everything else has been like $10 to $20 small little games like Drag and Drive and Switch 2 Welcome Tour, and tons of Switch 2 Edition games, which are old Switch 1 games that we played years ago. I wouldn't necessarily say more is better. In fact, the saying is less is more. So when I think back to it, the Switch 1 might have had less games in its first year, but it had bigger and better games. Bombshells like Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, and even Splatoon 2, with other great, really well-selling titles in there as well, like Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle and Xenoblade Chronicles 2. There was a lot to be excited about that covered pretty much every single IP that we needed. But for me personally, I feel like Donkey Kong is the only game that was worthwhile 100% spending the money to buy a Switch 2. Mario Kart World is good, not great. And for the rest of the games coming out, nothing really looks like it's going to hit that same level as Donkey Kong Bonanza to me yet. And no, it's not just because, oh, you only play Mario and Zelda. I play almost every single series. In fact, I just started the Xenoblade series, and I love it. So let me tell you right now, it's not just those 2 games. It's just Nintendo doesn't have any massive games. They're all spin-offs, racing games, or little small cheap games for them to charge you for a welcome tour for your Switch 2. So clearly, I've still taken my side to Team 2017, and I still think that yes, it's not just nostalgia, it's not just I'm remembering a certain amount of games, it's the fact that those games might have been few, but they were so massive, they leave longing impressions. They were just the next-gen games that make you say, now this is a Nintendo Switch game. I haven't really felt that yet with Switch 2 outside of Donkey Kong. But with that said, let me say this. It is not over. We are just beginning with the Switch 2, and like I said, this is only about month 3, moving on to month 4 of this console. The first half of next year can be stellar. It could still have a huge open world 3D Mario game or something, and another huge title. Splatoon Raiders can be massive and exciting. So we really don't know until we reach June of next year what Nintendo's full first year plans are. So yes, as much as I hate the saying, please be patient, we have to still be patient. Even though Nintendo's communication isn't great, they're not really showing us what to be excited for right now, I do believe things are going to change, and it all starts with a huge September Direct and maybe even a huge Mario's 40th anniversary celebration next month. So really all we can do is sit, wait, and hope. But let me know in the comments down below, what team are you on for your most exciting Switch or Switch 2 experience? Has it been 2017 or 2025? Which year do you think is better? And comment why. Keep it civil, because we all love Nintendo here. I absolutely hate it and think it's extremely childish when Nintendo fans bash other Nintendo fans for having an opinion. So just state your opinion and talk about why you believe that you're correct. What makes your reasoning more logical? Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe before you head out. And like always, I hope you have a blessed day, and I'll see you all on the next one. See you guys.